Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're exploring Chapter 4, Listening Beyond the Words from Fred Clements' incredibly practical toolkit, 30 coaching tools and approaches that actually work. We're diving straight into a foundational, yet honestly profoundly underestimated leadership skill: how to truly deeply listen. Let me ask you a question. It's a scenario I'm almost positive you've faced at some point. What do you do when a team member is just completely stuck? You know the exact workplace frustration I'm talking about, right? A conversation just keeps going in circles. Maybe there's a lack of confidence, poor ownership of a problem, or perhaps the feedback is just weak, and you're sitting there genuinely wanting to help, but you simply aren't sure how to actually get them moving forward. Like, how do you unstick their thinking? Well, let's dive into this, because our natural instinct in these moments is usually to act like the rush manager. When someone brings an issue to us, we often feel this immense pressure to solve it right then and there. We jump in, we give advice, we fix it. And look, if there's a genuine risk or some urgent technical problem, telling them what to do is absolutely appropriate. But if that person has the knowledge and the capability, fixing it for them actually strips away their ownership and just totally kills their motivation. On the flip side, we have the alternative, the coaching response. This is where you deliberately hit the brakes. Instead of them asking, "What should I do?" and you just firing off an order, you ask, "What outcome do you want? And what options do you think you have?" You're basically giving them the breathing room to build their own clarity. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how we make that crucial shift. It's called the Listen Framework. And it's Fred Clements' highly practical model for bringing real attention, discipline, and curiosity into your coaching conversations. It takes us way beyond just hearing the audio of someone's voice to actually understanding the human being in front of us. Listen is an acronym. So why does the structured approach matter so much? Well, there's a fantastic quote from the source material that sums it up perfectly. In coaching, listening is not just a communication skill, it is an intervention. I mean, that's profound, right? Influenced heavily by the work of experts like Nancy Kline and Stephen Covey, Clements points out that the way we listen can either help someone think more clearly or literally shut their thinking down completely. When you seek first to understand rather than just waiting for your turn to speak, you're actively creating a thinking environment. You're giving them the absolute psychological safety they need to explore possibilities out loud. All right, let's walk through how to actually use this framework in practice. It typically flows through 3 steps. Step 1, let them tell their story. Give them your full, absolute, undivided attention. Step 2, notice the underlying emotion beneath those words. And step 3, pause and reflect it right back to them. And I'm consciously slowing my own pace down right here just to demonstrate this, because the power of a genuine pause is simply incredible. Interrupting less is absolutely vital. In a coaching conversation, silence can definitely feel a bit awkward at first, but it is deeply respectful. It silently tells the other person, "Hey, I'm not going to rush your thinking." Now, what's really interesting here is the S in the Listen framework, sensing what is not being said. To be an effective coach, you really have to notice those hidden beliefs sitting right beneath the surface. For instance, you might listen for assumptions. A coachee might say, "I cannot challenge my manager," and they state it as an absolute unbreakable fact. But as a coach, you hear the assumption in that statement, an assumption that needs to be gently examined. Alternatively, you might be listening for emotion. Someone might vent endlessly about a heavy workload or a workplace conflict, but the true emotion underneath all that noise might actually be fear or perhaps frustration that's masking a deeper sense of loss. You're listening to understand their whole world. So the crucial point is knowing exactly what to watch out for, because there are definitely some common traps that even the most experienced managers fall into. First, assuming that silence means doing nothing. Deep listening is active. It involves reflection and actively checking your understanding. Second, listening only for the facts. If you just focus on the hard facts, you totally miss the deeper meaning, the emotions, and those hidden assumptions we were just talking about. And third, interrupting way too quickly. You might genuinely think you're helping by jumping in with a brilliant solution, but you're very likely cutting off the coach's deeper thinking right before they reach their own aha moment. Let's look at a short practical example of how this plays out in the real world. Imagine a team member, let's call them the anxious coachee, arrives for a one-to-one. They're completely overwhelmed and they just launch into this fast reactive surface story. They tell you exactly what happened, who said what in the meeting, and why the whole situation is a complete disaster. The immediate temptation for you as a manager is to alleviate their anxiety by jumping straight into problem-solving mode. But you know better. You know that this fast, anxious story is almost always just the very first layer. So instead of taking the bait and trying to solve the problem for them, you use the listen framework as an active intervention. You might gently interject and say, "Can we pause there for just a moment?" Or maybe you notice a pattern in their language and say, "I notice you use that word again." Or simply ask, "What's the part of this that feels most important to you right now?" These small, highly respectful interventions help the coachee stop spiraling. It helps them actually hear themselves, move past all the noise of that initial surface story, and identify the real core issue that actually needs addressing. And this beautifully answers the hook we opened with today. How exactly do you deal with a completely stuck team member? Well, by applying the listen framework, you actively transform the entire conversation. You help move them away from being stuck in those reactive, vague complaints where you end up doing all the heavy lifting. By creating that safe thinking environment, sensing what they aren't saying and noticing their patterns, you help them find true clarity, they regain their agency, and most importantly, they take genuine ownership of their very next steps. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final, somewhat provocative thought to take into your next one-to-one meeting or coaching session. I want you to ask yourself honestly, when you listen, are you just waiting for your turn to speak? Or are you actively creating the conditions for someone else to think? For more information, head over to clementsconsultancy.com to buy a discounted PDF copy of the book, or head over to Amazon for the ebook or printed version.